We look at canned food today and call it lazy. We fill our American kitchens with expensive meal kits and ignore the quiet reality happening next door. Millions of seniors survive on plates we consider unacceptable. Item 19 is a forgotten Midwest staple, and item 6 is something most people hide. Some are brilliant, and some are heartbreaking. The supermarket industry needed the public to forget them to sell frozen dinners. Here are the 25 forgotten survival meals for seniors living alone. Item 25 is sardines on toast. In 1943, the Joy of Cooking printed a recipe for sardine toast that cost less than a dime. You opened a tin, laid the fish across a piece of toast, and ate it over the sink or at the table. A tin of sardines cost 89 cents at most grocery stores in 2024. One tin had 23 grams of protein. Fishermen's wives in Gloucester, Massachusetts, ate sardine toast for lunch every day through the 1950s and 1960s. For a senior with shaking hands, there was no knife work, no cooking, and no heat required. Item 24 is the peanut butter and banana sandwich. George Washington Carver spent decades proving that the peanut could feed a nation. A jar of peanut butter cost $2.50 in 2024 and lasted a single person 2 weeks. 2 slices of bread, a smear of peanut butter, and half a banana sliced on top formed a complete meal. The USDA reported in 2023 that peanut butter was the single most consumed protein source among Americans over the age of 75 who lived alone. Not chicken, not eggs, but peanut butter. Item 23 is cottage cheese and canned peaches. It was a scoop of cottage cheese dropped onto a plate beside a mound of canned peach halves. A half cup of cottage cheese delivered 14 grams of protein and was soft enough for seniors with dental problems to eat without struggle. Hospital cafeterias served this exact combination on trays to patients recovering from surgery in the 1960s and 1970s. Weight Watchers put cottage cheese and fruit on its approved list in 1963, and an entire generation of American women never stopped eating it. Item 22 is the fried egg sandwich. It requires 2 eggs, 2 slices of bread, and a pat of butter. The total cost in 2024 was 63 cents. You melted the butter in a skillet, cracked the eggs, waited 3 minutes, put them between the bread, and sat down. Edna Kowalski, a retired seamstress in Toledo, Ohio, made one every morning and every evening for 19 years. She called it her bookend meal because the day started and ended the exact same way. That rhythm mattered to her more than the food itself. Item 21 is buttered noodles with salt and pepper. You boiled a handful, drained them, and added a tablespoon of butter, salt, and black pepper. It required 3 minutes of cooking and 0 minutes of thought. For a senior whose appetite had faded, plain buttered noodles went down easy and stayed down. A geriatric nutritionist at Johns Hopkins published a paper in 2018, noting that simple carbohydrate meals like buttered noodles played a critical role in preventing dangerous weight loss among elderly patients living independently. Item 20 is canned chili over crackers. You opened the can, heated it in a bowl in the microwave for 90 seconds, and crumbled crackers on top. Hormel introduced its canned chili in 1935, marketing it as a convenience food for busy families. Truck stops across Oklahoma and Texas sold this combination for $2.99 in the 1980s. For a senior with limited mobility, the microwave was the only tool required. You could make this sitting in a kitchen chair. Item 19 is tuna salad on bread. The American canned tuna industry peaked in 1989, when the average American ate 3.5 pounds of canned tuna per year. Dorothy Hale, a 74-year-old widow in Wichita, Kansas, told a food bank volunteer in 2019 that she ate tuna on bread 5 nights a week. The volunteer asked if she wanted something different, but Dorothy declined. She stated the tuna was easy and the bread was soft. She could eat it watching the evening news without getting up. Item 18 is toast with canned baked beans. In Britain, beans on toast is a national institution. American seniors ate it just as often, but called it a snack. Admitting that beans on toast was dinner felt like admitting something larger. That is the cruelty of food poverty in America. Nobody should feel ashamed of feeding themselves for $1.30, but millions of people did. Item 17 is the cheese quesadilla. By 2024, flour tortillas outsold hamburger buns in the United States. The shift was not cultural appreciation, but sheer economics. A package of 10 tortillas cost $2.49. Item 16 is oatmeal with brown sugar. The Quaker Oats Company began marketing oatmeal as a health food in the 1980s. Meals on Wheels programs across the country reported that oatmeal was the #1 food item that recipients already had in their homes before the first delivery arrived. It preceded the help. Item 15 is tomato soup with crackers. A can of Campbell's condensed tomato soup had been sitting in American pantries since 1897. Internal marketing research leaked in 2019 showed that adults over 65 accounted for 38% of all condensed soup purchases, making them the largest single demographic. The company knew this data well. Item 14 is the bologna and cheese sandwich. Factory workers in Detroit and Cleveland and Gary ate this every day for 30 years. They kept eating it in retirement because the taste was wired into them. The economics of meals like this one reveal a reality that the food industry hides. A package of bologna, a loaf of bread, and a block of cheese cost under $7 together and fed a person for a week. A single frozen dinner from the same grocery store cost $4 and lasted one night. The math was not complicated. But the frozen dinner had a commercial, a colorful box, and a place in the freezer section at eye level. The bologna was on the bottom shelf, and the beans were in the back aisle. These meals survived not because of marketing, but in spite of it. The cheapest, most nutritious foods in America are the ones with the smallest advertising budgets and the lowest profit margins. That is not an accident. It is a business model that depends on seniors not knowing what a can of beans and a slice of bread can actually do. Item 13 is scrambled eggs and toast. Clara Canucciari was 93 years old when her grandson filmed her making Depression-era recipes in her kitchen. During the Depression, her family ate scrambled eggs 3 or 4 times a week because a dozen eggs cost 18 cents in 1933. For a senior with limited grip strength, cracking eggs was sometimes the hardest part. Some kept a small bowl on the counter to crack them against the edge. The adaptation was quiet, practical, and invisible, much like most things seniors did to keep themselves fed. Item 12 is ramen noodles with an egg. A single packet of ramen cost 25 cents in 2024. A retired postal worker's wife in Cleveland, Ohio, a woman named Vivian Cross, ate ramen with an egg every night for 2 years. After her husband passed, she could make it without thinking, and she could eat it without effort. That was enough. Item 11 is pimento cheese on bread. In the South, they called pimento cheese the caviar of the poor. The recipe first appeared in Good Housekeeping in 1908. The store-bought version worked the same for someone eating alone with no reason to fuss. Funeral homes across the Carolinas served pimento cheese sandwiches at every reception. It required no heat, no preparation, and no skill. Item 10 is cornbread crumbled in buttermilk. This was the meal that confused outsiders and comforted insiders. In rural Arkansas, Tennessee, and Kentucky, this was supper on a hot summer night when the kitchen was too warm to use the stove. A retired coal miner in Harlan County, Kentucky, named Vernon Sizemore, ate cornbread and buttermilk every evening of his retirement. The tradition crossed racial lines in the rural South in a way that few other foods did. Item 9 is canned soup with saltines. It requires a can of chicken noodle soup, a sleeve of saltines, and a bowl. For a person living alone, opening a can of soup was sometimes the most significant act of self-care in an entire day. It meant the person had decided to eat. The can opener was the most important tool in a senior's kitchen. It was not the stove, not the oven, nor the stand mixer collecting dust on the counter. Item 8 is rice and butter with soy sauce. A bag of white rice cost $2.99 and lasted a single person a month. A retired janitor in Sacramento named Frank Tanaka ate rice and butter with soy sauce for dinner most weeknights through the 1990s. He told his grandson it was the same meal his mother made during the internment at Tule Lake in 1943 when butter and soy sauce were the only seasonings the camp kitchen had. The recipe carried forward not because it was good, but because it meant something. Item 7 is the grilled cheese sandwich. The cheese melted and stretched, and the bread turned golden. Margaret Hensley, a retired telephone operator in Louisville, Kentucky, made a grilled cheese every Sunday evening for 22 years after she stopped going to church. She said Sunday evenings were the loneliest part of the week, and the grilled cheese was the closest thing to company. Item 6 is cereal for dinner. A social worker in Phoenix, Arizona, reported in 2021 that more than half the seniors she visited kept cereal as their primary evening meal. The Kellogg's company sold $14.2 billion worth of cereal worldwide in 2023. Their customers included millions of elderly Americans who ate cornflakes alone at kitchen tables at 6 o'clock in the evening. The effort required to make anything else exceeded the energy they had left in the day. Item 5 is banana and peanut butter on crackers. For a senior with mobility issues, the recliner was the safest place to eat. The kitchen was too far, the chairs were too hard, and the walk back was too long. Occupational therapists who worked with elderly patients in home settings reported that recliner eating was far more common than most families realized. A person could make this sitting in a recliner with a plate balanced on their lap. Item 4 is canned salmon on toast. The soft bones inside the can were packed with calcium, something doctors specifically recommended for seniors concerned about bone density. Cannery workers in Astoria, Oregon, brought home dented cans that could not be sold and fed their families on salmon toast for decades. Women stood shoulder to shoulder for 10-hour shifts, trimming and packing fish by hand. A retired cannery worker named Helen Yamaguchi ate salmon on toast every afternoon until she was 96 years old. For a senior whose world was shrinking, that consistency was a kind of anchor. Item 3 is the bean and cheese burrito. Mexican-American families in El Paso, San Antonio, and Los Angeles fed their children on bean burritos for generations. It was not a placeholder. It was the taste of a kitchen that no longer existed, of hands that no longer cooked, and of a voice that used to call you to the table. Item 2 is bread and gravy. Families in the Ozarks and across the Great Plains called it poor man's gravy or sawmill gravy. A retired farmer in Joplin, Missouri, named Earl Tate, made bread and gravy every night of the last decade of his life. He said the gravy tasted the way the farmhouse smelled when his father came in from the fields. He stated that was worth more than steak. Item 1 is hot dogs sliced in beans. You sliced 2 hot dogs into the beans, heated the whole thing, and ate it straight from the bowl. This was the meal that Clara Canucciari's family made during the Depression. It is the same dinner that millions of Americans grew up eating without ever realizing it was a survival meal. Make one of these meals this week. Pick the fried egg sandwich, or the beans on toast, or the bread and gravy. Then sit down at the table. Do not use the couch, the recliner, or stand at the counter. Use a real plate. These meals were never just about being poor. They were about refusing to let poverty take your dignity along with your money. Feeding yourself, even when the meal is simple and the kitchen is quiet and the table is set for one, remains an act of defiance.